So maybe you clicked on this video because you're personally unhappy, you know someone who's unhappy, or you just want to know there's other people who struggle with happiness and struggle with feeling good all the time, feeling like their life is on track, feeling like they're working towards something better. And I totally get that. But here's the thing here's what's happened really. Here's what's happened with happiness and what happiness is. If you ask people to maybe define what happiness is, they might actually struggle with that. What is happiness? How do we know we're happy, and how do we know that that's what we should be going for in life? Because the problem is, in today's modern society, happiness has been conflated with joy. These are actually two different things, okay? One of these things is going to rely on more short-term feelings, short-term chemicals released in your brain telling you something feels good. For example, you sit down and eat something delicious, or you take a drink of something, or you experience something that fills you with adrenaline and it gives you an adrenaline rush. That may be correlated with something like happiness or a short-term fleeting feeling. But really, to have long-term happiness or long-term state of fulfillment, which is really what you should be shooting for, you need to be thinking of ways to make yourself more joyful, more fulfilled, because that's what's going to promote long-term happiness. Because short-term things, short-term events, whether it's going out and buying something or just getting that little dopamine hit, that is not long-term happiness or joy or sustained fulfillment. These are two completely different things. And one way of keeping yourself fulfilled by just going for these fleeting things that are short-term is completely unsustainable. You're never going to be able to do it full time. You're never going to be able to be in this state of pure dopamine rush, because once you do it once, you need more of it, and you need more and more. And pretty soon, the effects of these things are less and less over time. And you just need more of that tiny little thing that it started out with just to get the same effect. We can feel this when it comes to caffeine, for example. You can take a little bit of caffeine and you feel good, you have a little more energy. But pretty soon, day after day after day, you need more and more caffeine just to feel normal. That's what a lot of these things can do to us. So whether it's buying something or engaging in certain pleasures, at first, just a little bit is enough to feel good. But at a certain point, you need more and more and more just to feel the same way you normally do when you wake up on a daily basis. This is what happens to people when they're drinkers or when they smoke marijuana or other drugs, is they need more and more just to feel the same way that they did in the beginning. And this is a destructive cycle, because you think you're going to get the happiness and fulfillment from this thing, from this material thing that you're doing, or maybe this certain activity. But reality, it just comes to demand more and more from you over time. It doesn't get better. You don't feel happier, because pleasure is not equal to happiness, and long-term happiness and joy doesn't come from just simply piling up as much pleasure points as possible like a video game. Now, unfortunately, we live in a society where you have products and experiences and things thrown in your face constantly. So it's very hard in modern society to not engage in a lot of these short-term pleasures, because companies and people want to make you think that the short-term pleasure is the happiness, that is the joy, that is the end goal. But I'm here to tell you that's not the case, okay? This short-term pleasure points and things that you do, that's not the long-term goal. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with engaging in pleasureful experiences. There's nothing wrong with that, depending on what it is. But for the most part, finding pleasure in your life, that's not what's the problem. The problem is when you think that pleasure is what's going to amount to the happiness. If I just add up enough pleasure, I'll finally become happy long term, because I found that one thing that makes me good for a little while. And like I said, society sells us this, because society wants us to think of us as consumers. We just consume things, we get pleasure points, and then we reset at the beginning of the day. We're people with souls, and something greater than that needs to fulfill us. So we need to find long-term joy and happiness. And a lot of times that's not going to come from us seeking what we need next. One of the quickest ways to feel better about yourself and to get out of depression, or just to feel more happiness overall, is go do something for somebody else. Notice that in your maybe darkest points where you're feeling depressed, you're feeling down about yourself, and you think that it's going to require some other pleasure. If I just go do this thing, if I had the money to go do this thing, then I would be happy. Instead, in that moment, think about what you can do for someone else in your life, or maybe a stranger. It doesn't even have to be someone you know. What can you do for them? Could you go run an errand for them? Could you do a favor for them? Could you just tell them thank you? Could it be as simple as that? Think about that first. Do that. Then think about the feeling you have after you do that. It's not going to be the same as when you take a hit of whatever pleasure you're thinking about. There's a greater sense of fulfillment there. There's a sense of accomplishment there that you have. There's a sense of, I contributed something to the world today that was beyond me seeking out what I wanted. That's the quickest way to get out of a pleasure or depression spiral. Because the truth is that when you become depressed, it becomes very easy for people to spiral into being more and more selfish, being more and more concerned about themselves. I'm not saying depression isn't a real thing. It is for a lot of people. And they should seek the real help they need if they do feel depressed. But if you're starting to have these feelings, just in my personal experience, whenever I started to spiral into these things, and because you're depressed, you start thinking about yourself more and more, what can I do to make myself feel better? And then that doesn't fulfill it. So you become a little more depressed and you start thinking more and more about what you can do for yourself. And it continues to spiral like this. But the quickest way out of that depression spiral is to think about, what can I do for something else? How can I add value to the world or my community or my family? Because depression is going to come from a regressed form or a suppressed form of self-worth. You don't feel like you're valuable. You don't feel like you add anything, that you can do anything, that you have something to offer. But as soon as you're able to do something for somebody else, make them feel good, make them feel happy, make them feel joyful, your self-value goes up immediately. And that helps relieve a lot of the problems of depression. Now, I'm not going to say that that fixes everything, but it's a good place to start. If you're depressed and things aren't working, it's a good, maybe you should try something different. And so I would give that a shot. Try thinking about other people. Try thinking about how you can make the people around you, their lives better. Now, I'm not saying that you should just become completely consumed with doing things for other people and never focus on yourself. There's totally times where you need to focus on yourself and you need to, learn how to improve yourself and learn things about yourself to move forward. I'm not saying that there aren't points in time for that, because you do need time to yourself as well. It's not always about other people. But when you're in this unhappiness spiral, or you don't feel this joy, a lot of the times we've become a little too self-consumed. We've become a little too attached to what we want, and we've forgotten how to look outside of that. And so that's one way to accomplish and add some joy, some long-term joy to your life. You knowing that, hey, I totally made someone's day because I did this. That's going to make you feel good in a completely different way than going out and doing whatever, consuming whatever pleasure you wanted to do. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But to solve that lack of fulfillment, it's not going to come from you just stacking up more pleasure points. And then as soon as I get enough pleasure points, I will finally be happy because I'm consuming enough pleasures. That's not how it works. Look at some of the richest, most successful people, actors in Hollywood. Are they insanely happy because they have a lot of money and they have the ability to consume a lot of pleasures or take part in a lot of things? A lot of them aren't, because they haven't learned how to actually fulfill themselves. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with being an actor, being wealthy, buying things, doing fun things. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But the problem is when you don't learn how to fulfill yourself and how to add something to other human beings who have souls, right, and have value because they have souls. So if you're feeling a little unhappy, maybe the first thing you can turn to is, what can I do for somebody else? And once you've accomplished that, then maybe think about what you could do for yourself as well. But sometimes we get too concerned with turning inwards, and we just need to turn outward a little bit, and that can improve your mood right away. So thank you for listening to what I had to say.